Hey friends, Yossi here, back with another story. This week's story is incredible. It's about saving Jewish children from being drafted into the Russian army at a very young age. And I just want to note that this story has a lot of details, so please forgive if there are some things that aren't clear. Any questions you have, drop in the comments below and I will get to them, God willing. Drop a like and subscribe. Let's get on to the story. Maisa. Okay. Good luck, everybody. Thank you for joining. This week's story is a very exciting one. It's about saving Jewish souls from the Russian army. There was a Chassid who lived in the town of Velachov. His name was Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim. And when he was older already, and he felt like he was there's a Chassid who's saying this story. The Chassid's name is, I think, Reb Dov Zev, or Reb Zev Dov, I don't remember exactly his name. We'll call him Reb Dov. He was sent by the Rebbe Marash to this town to do some, for certain shlichus. And he told a story about this man named Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim. Basically, what happened was Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim felt he was about to pass away. And so he called a bunch of people from Anash into his, he called people from Anash into his, to where he was. And he also asked for this Reb Dov to come, who was the one who's telling the story that Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim is telling. So he calls them in, and he says, I have something that I have a last wish I want you to fulfill, but before I have to tell you the story. And then he tells the story. So anyway, to continue the story, Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim went to the Tzemach Tzedek. He was by the Tzemach Tzedek for Hanukkah, and the Tzemach Tzedek said 3 different mamarim about Mesiras Nefesh. And the main point of these mamarim was that the war against the Yevonim was, even though it was a physical war, really at the root it was a spiritual war. And because of the Mesiras Nefesh, that's why they won. Yehoshua Chaim, his father, who lived in the town of Kalisk, which is near Vitebsk, and they had a place where they would work on the land, and they were very careful about Tachnasas Archim. They always had people coming in. So one night, Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim heard a knock on the door. And he opens the door, and it's very cold outside, and he sees 2 Yidden who are wearing their winter gear. They're covered in snow, so right away he holds his hand out, just Shalom Aleichem, he brings them in. He invites them to sit next to the fireplace to warm up, and he offers them some bread and some butter and some milk, gives them a hot drink. And they sit down to eat. He, meanwhile, goes out for a second just to check his courtyard to see what's going on. And he feels like he sounds to him like he hears a child's voice. So he thinks maybe it's a cat. Baby cats, they sound like, young children sometimes. It sounds similar. But as he's, walking around in his courtyard, he hears something which is unmistakably a kid's voice, crying. So he calls out and he says, who's out there crying? What's going on? He says, it's me, Binyamin. And the sound is coming from the winter wagon of these 2 Jews who just came in. So he goes, takes a look in the wagon, and he sees a shudder passes through his entire body. He sees 2 kids lying down. Their hands are tied behind their back. Their hands and feet are tied. And one is sleeping and one is crying. And in those days, there were a lot of chappers. What would they do? They would go and look for Jewish kids. They would sell the Jewish kids to communities who wanted to substitute their own kids from their community to be given to the army. Because basically every community had to give a quota of kids to go to the army. And so unfortunately communities would, try to find ways where people from other communities had to give their kids, right? They wanted to save their own skin. It's very sad that Yidden were doing this to other Jews. But, and I don't know if the chappers were always Yidden, but this Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim is saying, I realized right away that these 2 Yidden were chappers. So, and he's saying, I'm afraid that these guys are going to take my kids. The first thing he does, he unties these kids' hands. He takes them to his brother's house, who was in the same courtyard. He lived with him. His brothers lived all in the same property. And he takes them to his house. He explains to his brother what's going on. His brother's name was Michal. His brother Michal took them to the safest room he had, secured them over there. Now, Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim runs back to his own house, and he sees that one of these Yidden are talking to his son. Or he goes to everyone in his family, tells them quietly, "There's two chappers here, be careful." This one chapper is talking to his son, says, "Oh, you seem to have a very smart kid. I, unfortunately, Hashem made my lot that I have two kids who are not so, they went crazy, and I'm taking them to the doctor in Vitebsk, and they can't sit still. They're so out of whack that I had to tie them up." Meanwhile, Michal comes back to the house. His brother comes back to the house, and he's so angry about these Yidden, he couldn't hold himself back. He says, "You chappers, get out of here quickly before, if you don't get out of here right now, your end is going to be bitter." I mean, these guys didn't realize they were caught red-handed. They didn't know they found the kids already. This guy says, "Oh, you are not nice Yidden. You guys obviously have no rachmanis. You see, I'm traveling with these kids, and you're not being nice to me." And they both basically, run out of there, all angry. They come to the wagon, and they realize the kids aren't there. So they come back running, and they're yelling, but they realize very quickly that none of the yelling is going to help. They got caught, and they better leave. So they left. About a month afterwards, it came time for Reb Michal, Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim's brother, to go to the Tzemach Tzedek. And Michal tells the story, this whole thing that happened to the Tzemach Tzedek, and it says that the Tzemach Tzedek's face was shining with happiness, and he benched all of them, and he told them to keep the boys for a year, and then to take the boys back to their parents, and the boys stayed with his own children, and they learned by the Melamed, and they actually progressed very, very well in their own learning. Now, Rabbi Yehoshua Chaim is saying the story. He's saying, ever since then, I had this burning desire to do pidyon shvuim, to free captives. And I couldn't hold back anymore. I went to the Rebbe and I told him what I want to do, and he said, "You should do it." He gave him a bracha to do it. And he gave him a directive on how to do it. He said, for about 3 to 4 months out of the year to go and do it. Once in the winter, once in the summer. And he would go for 7 years. For 7 years, he did this, once in the winter, once in the summer. He went around and did, put all his efforts into freeing kids from the Kantonist program, And after 7 years, he got caught, and he almost got, the death sentence, but he finally got released. And when he got released, he went to Tzemach Tzedek, and Tzemach Tzedek gave him a bracha for long life. And then he gave him a bracha called, it says in the book, it says, "Imi b'mchitzasi." You want to, maybe, Yudli, you want to explain what that means? Imi b'mchitzasi? It means to be in the what does it mean? The Elam Haba, to be with the Rebbe, nearby? What does it mean?
Yeah, it means the same, you will be with me in my domain.
Right, so basically, it means that in some way or other, the Rebbe is taking care of you even in the next world, I guess. But anyway, so he gave him that bracha, and then he said, "I know I'm about to pass away, and my last wish is for you to say these words after they bury me, to say these words with a minyan of people." And he gave them a nusach. He said basically, Rebbe, saying in Tzemach Tzedek, the son-in-law of the Rebbe, which is the Mittler Rebbe, the grandson of the Rebbe, which is the Alter Rebbe. He said that these 10 people are here to tell, meaning they are saying, right? These 10 people are saying, we are telling you that Yehoshua Chaim ben Esther passed away, and to remind you that you gave him a bracha for Imi b'mchitzasi, this special bracha. And he made them promise they would say it. And this Chassid, Reb Doiv, he finishes the story saying, after they buried him, he said the next day he passed away. And after they buried him the same day. Myself and 10 people, including myself, said this nusach. To remind the Tzemach Tzedek about the promise he made. Anyway, this is the story of saving Yidden from the Kantonistim, from the Russian army. May we experience miracles like this. Maybe be able to do Mesiras Nefesh in a way of simcha, and a good tavach, everybody. Thank you very much.
I am an ancient wall of stone atop a hill so high.